Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today we will gather our courage to gaze into the eye of Beholder, an evil-eyed symbol of Dungeons & Dragons series. The creators of Dungeons & Dragons borrowed heavily from popular fantasy worlds and mythology. But it would be wrong to say that there are no unique creatures in the gaming multiverse. One of the first such unique monsters in Dungeons & Dragons was the Beholder, also known as Evil Eye. The Beholder is a classic Dungeons & Dragons monster. First introduced in the original Greyhawk supplement for the game back in the 1970s, these iconic creatures have remained one of D&D's most unique and distinctive creatures throughout the game's various editions. A beholder is an aberration, causing it to stand out even among the many strange and terrifying creatures that populate the fantasy world. It is a large, spheroid creature, usually depicted as being roughly the size of a large wagon. On the front of this body is a single giant eye, surrounded by numerous smaller eyes on stalks that stick out from the top and sides of the creature. Beholders typically have a massive maw filled with sharp teeth. Each of a beholder's eye stalks has a unique magical eye beam that it can use to project a wide variety of effects. Depending on the specific variant of beholder, these could include petrification, charm, paralyzation, sleep, telekinesis, disintegration, and death rays, among others. The large central eye usually creates an anti-magic field, which can shut down spells and other magical effects. Additional small eyes also give the beholder a 360-degree view, so it is almost impossible to get close to them unnoticed. Thanks to the unique structure of the iris and the presence of a dozen eye lenses, the beholder can adjust its vision to almost any lighting. For example, see in the dark. The origin of beholders is shrouded in mystery and open for various speculations. Most sources agree that they appeared on some distant plane of existence and gradually settled from there throughout the mortal worlds. The evil-eyed folk themselves believe that they were created by an insane deity called the Great Mother. They are so hostile to all things living that they can easily be taken for primitive evil beasts. It is not easy to believe that a giant flying eyeball can be intelligent, but it is true. Though by human standards, most beholders would pass for dangerous madmen. In terms of personality and behavior, beholders are typically depicted as paranoid, xenophobic, and highly intelligent. Greed, cruelty, lust for power are the most common qualities of this folk. They tend to perceive all other creatures as potential threats, including other beholders. Due to such personal traits, many beholders choose to live in solitude because of their immense fear and paranoia. Their lairs are usually complex, vertical spaces that allow the beholder to take advantage of their natural flight, with traps and security measures designed to utilize their eye beam powers. Beholders prefer to settle in the wild, untouched corners of the world. Sometimes the smartest evil eyes acquire a retinue of primitive monsters and even other intelligent creatures, whom they subjugate to their will. And the most ancient and powerful of the beholders, known as hive mothers, are capable of enslaving even their younger and weaker kindred, and to strengthen their power, and occasionally to find entire settlements. Ancient eyes live much longer than the 100 years of regular beholders and reach enormous size and power. Most of the evil-eyed folk would not even think of looking for a place among the lower creatures, such as elves, people, or gnomes. But occasionally there are exceptions. These include perhaps the most famous beholder of the Forgotten Realms, the ancient creature Xanathar, who settled in the catacombs under Waterdeep and founded a thieves' guild of his name. Naturally, Xanathar became something like a local godfather. Subsequently, another old beholder killed Xanathar, took his place, and even his identity. In addition to beholders themselves, In the vast worlds of Dungeons and Dragons, there are many of their relatives. Of these, the most common are the relatively harmless goths, which are easily recognized by their small size and the presence of 6 additional eyes. One of the most unusual species, the overseers, resembles some kind of predatory plant with tentacles like an octopus, and besides, they do not fly. Observers, on the contrary, are very similar in appearance to ordinary beholders, except that they have only 4 small eyes, but these can think logically, are not prone to senseless violence, and know how to cooperate and even be friends with other creatures. Just as powerful magicians after death can turn into leashes, so a deceased beholder whose spirit continues to control the dead body can become a death tyrant. It looks like a flying beholder skull with an empty eye socket with magical fire. Beholders do not have a heart, and its functions are performed by a lung, the pulsation of which drives pink blood through the monster's veins. They feed on everything they can get their teeth on, and once they have eaten, they can go without food for a long time. Beholders are asexual and reproduce only once in a lifetime with the help of a strange organ located in the back area. When the time comes to give birth, the happy parent regurgitates this organ through the mouth, from which about a dozen offspring are born. Usually, most of them die soon. Beholders do not care about their children. The beholder's brain consists of 2 almost independent parts, rational and intuitive, which do not get along well with each other. The contradictions between them explain the aggressiveness, paranoia, and tendency towards madness, characteristic for their kin. Very few beholders with dominating rational half of the brain manage to maintain control over their madness. Beholders by nature are much better equipped to hit opponents from a long distance, but if something happens, they can stand up for themselves in close combat. Their powerful jaws with dagger-sharp teeth are a very formidable weapon. The lack of hands naturally does not allow beholders to create or build anything themselves, but this does not mean that they rely only on their innate abilities without using magical objects. For example, special lenses allow them to intensify the rays emitted by their eyes, and sometimes beholders do not disdain edged weapons, even if they have to hold them in their teeth. Given their formidable powers and challenging mindset, beholders generally make for memorable and threatening boss monsters. The various interpretations of the beholder over the years have made it one of the most recognizable aspects of the D&D franchise. Oddly enough, the beholder has remained virtually unchanged since its first appearance, except that there are more new subspecies with the release of each new edition of the game. However, now its habitat is no longer limited to the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. Similar creatures can be found in Heroes of Might and Magic, and in King's Bounty, and in many other games. Unlike most of the bizarre creatures made up for Dungeons and Dragons, the beholder has moved to other fictional worlds and feels quite comfortable there. Interestingly, the name and image of the beholder are considered product identity by Wizards of the Coast, the current publisher and copyright holder of D&D. This means that other companies are technically prohibited from using the name Beholder and its unique design in their products without permission. As a result, other tabletop and video game companies have often come up with their own versions of the beholder, adapting its look and feel but renaming it to avoid copyright issues. Just a few examples are Oculus or Watchers, Evil Eyes or Floating Eye. Fearsome and dangerous, beholders make an interesting contribution to the bestiary of various magical and mystical creatures, even if sometimes we have to refrain from using their name. Thank you for watching.